episode may contain language or discussions that may be offensive or triggering. Refer to the episode summary for details. Welcome to On Her Terms. I am your host, Charlene Ketchum, and I have two talented ladies with me today. First, we have Jacqueline Greely of Mirrored Vision Coaching. She is a certified life coach and a sex therapist. And we also have Miss Tanita Daniel-Chavis. She is a self-actualization coach, teaching women to heal and become the best versions of themselves. I am the owner, she is the owner of Gold Conjure, an online shop that specializes in spiritually charged products and services to assist customers and clients with spiritual healing and work. She's also an intuitive reader and medium. She's a podcast member of Marketing Mavens and is in the process of writing her first ebook. So welcome to Jacqueline and Tanita. Today, we are talking about the cost of being every woman. This episode will arm women with the tools to discern when and how to make decisions for themselves and make themselves a priority, how to say no, how to establish boundaries for themselves and others. Yeah. So when I was envisioning this topic, one of the things that came to my mind was, do y'all remember the Whitney Houston song, I'm Every Woman? She did that on the Bodyguard soundtrack.
Yes.
In the video, she was pregnant, she was glowing, and she had all these gorgeous women around her. And that was the anthem for a minute.
Yes,
Everybody was like, that's my jam. You know, I'm every woman.
Yes.
Anything you want, I can do it. I got it. And we've been living that way even before Whitney remade Shaka Khan's song.
Right.
We've been operating like I'm every woman, which is, it sounds good, but is it really good for us? And that's something we're going to dig into, today, because, with this year with COVID and the economic crisis as a result of it, we're seeing a lot of fallout that's disproportionately impacting Black women. We see the stats that Black women are leaving the workplace in higher numbers compared to other populations. We're seeing the Black community being hit harder with more serious impacts of COVID. And a lot of that is a result of higher rates of stress, which causes inflammation in our bodies. Higher rates of inflammation cause disease. So we're seeing these things hit women, Black women, the hardest. So we have to re-examine this whole concept of, being every woman. How good is that? How is this strong woman helping us, perpetuating that? Is it helping us or is it hurting us? And where's the medium? What have your observations been, about that in your life? Like, as you grew up, what was your sense of expectation for you as a woman?
I think that growing up, so I one of the things I recall is when my mom was teaching us how to cook. And there was three of us. It was my sister and my brother. And she made it especially heavy on us, on the girls, to make sure that we knew how to cook and that we knew how to cook and clean. She was like serious about us cooking and cleaning. And we had to learn to cook for the entire family. So while my brother may every now and again, he would learn how to do something for the family, my sister and I were expected to cook a full meal. And then my dad, even, I remember him telling me, nobody wants a woman who can't cook, Tanita. So you need to keep this up. You need to keep practicing. Because even when I didn't feel like it, I was literally trained out of what I felt like doing. Just because they had expectations of me due to societal decision about who I should be and how I should be. And so I learned to cook. And it wasn't until many, many, many years later that I finally loved to cook. I do love cooking now, and I do cook for my my family, but like, I don't do so out of obligation anymore. I do so because I love it. So
I think for me, I'm the oldest child, so that oldest child, the lineage. you take on those responsibilities as the older person. And it was only me for about 7 years. And so I grew up around older people, and I just kind of took on this old spirit and, just move things along.
Yeah.
And so I carried that through, just being the one taking charge, the one behind the scenes, making things move, making things happen. You don't have to give me the accolades, but I'm the one that really put it together. I'm the one that's keeping things going. And so I never really asked for help. I didn't want to seem like I couldn't handle it all. And my most recent example of that would probably be about 8 years ago. So my father transitioned 8 years ago, come November. And so he made me the executor of his estate. And I remember I did not fully grieve probably the first 4 years, because I took on this burden of making sure everybody was okay. And in that, I suffered, like my health was suffering. I was angry all the time. I probably had depression, but I just never sought the therapy that I needed to grieve properly, and all the things that I had been going through in my life. And so it got to a point where it was like that crash and burn, but not really knowing it was that crash and burn. And it was last year, September 11th. And it was just like that. It was everything converged at one moment. And my spirit was like, you can't do this anymore. Like, you're literally going to be meeting your father if you don't let this go. And so it was, my spirit was purging, my soul was purging. Like, it was almost an out of body experience. It was, and ever since that moment, my life really has been different, and I'm starting to choose me first and put my boundaries in place and learn to say that no is a full, complete sentence.
Yeah, that's great. Full stop.
Yeah.
Full stop.
You just gave a whole testimony with that. Two things,
that's beautiful.
that I want to follow up on that you both just said that just stuck out to me. Tanita, you said that you were, you knew what you were trained up to be and how to be.
Yeah.
And Jacqueline, you said that you didn't want to not take on all these things. You didn't want anybody to think you could do it. And so that sounds like conditioning. And you can correct me if that's not the right word to use.
That is the exact word.
That's absolutely. Wow.
And I think we're conditioned to take on these roles, and to Tanita's point, where we don't want to, where we feel obligated to, but we put who we want to be on the back burner to satisfy someone else's dreams for us.
Yes.
And so
I was just going to say that that's exactly right, Jacqueline. That is exactly right, is that we put our dreams, our hopes, our decisions about who we are and how we show up. We put those decisions on the back burner for the immediate greatest good. But what actually is the greatest good? If all the mothers in a community are putting their decision about who they are on the back burner, and the only women that get to be free are like those without children, or those that they say is this way or that way, who truly are we being? And if those women that are single and free, as we like to term it, are putting themselves first, but don't have a good idea of what putting yourself first looks like, because they're raised by the mothers, what are we turning into? What are we becoming?
And
what are we becoming?
That's something I think that brings further conversation and discussion, and things that we don't really want to talk about are like those mother wounds, because it's from our mothers that we learn
Yes.
to
Yes.
be. You know, we learn about relationships from our mothers. And
Yes.
if she was, you know, not satisfied, if she just went along, if she was abused, we learn those patterns. And sometimes in order for us to be free, we have to learn how to forgive our mothers and our fathers, but really our mothers first. Because I think I'm kind of going through that as well, where my lens has changed and I'm looking at my mother. I do some ancestral work too, so I'm looking at my grandmother and I'm looking at the women in my family, and I'm just kind of like, okay, so let's talk, because I'm trying to understand some things, and we need to get to a place where we can be honest about our family lineage and say, okay, Ma, what you did or how you acted or what you chose to do set it up for me to make decisions that may not have been healthy. And then we have to remember that she saw it from her mother, and it's cyclical and it's generational. And at some point we have to cut that cord.
Oh my goodness, you just preached. Tanita and I were talking before we got started about the trauma we as women carry in our wombs, you know, and people, it's just, it's like, you know, and this is not just like people think this is like some far-fetched concept, you know, but even when we talk about the residual impacts of slavery and things that have happened, you know, to Black people in America, this is ingrained in our DNA. This is stuff that is in our soul. This impacts generations to come. Trauma is not something that's merely something you experience on the external environment. That's something that's in your psyche. That is in that it reconstructs your immune system, the way your brain functions. And so as a woman, and this is one of the reasons I was inspired to want to have this show and have these conversations. And I'm sure what motivated you ladies to do the work that you do. We know that as women, it's so powerful because we have to address this, because whether or not you choose to be a mother, you know, you carry the most powerful vessel that you carry a womb. And so if you don't start that healing in you, regardless of how it manifests, that trauma manifests with you, it will impact your children. So it starts even before the babies are here. It's it's powerful. And so I love that you're having those conversations with your family, Jacqueline, and saying, let me ask you, how tell me about your life. And or how did you initiate those conversations? That's a better question. How did you initiate those conversations?
So, you know, not typical, but as most of our Black families, we don't talk. We don't talk about, you know, the fact that grandpa actually had, you know, some women on the side. And, you know, they came out of the woodworks when she died, or, you know, that the auntie who, you know, never got married really, you know, may have been a lesbian. You know, these were things we don't talk about in families. And so, unfortunately, I didn't have, my grandmother passed when I was 14, 15. And so I know what I learned from her. Very spiritual woman, very, you know, loved God. She really should have been a theologian because she just had a knowledge about the Bible and God that was just beautiful. Um, and she was adored by my grandfather, in spite of, you know, whatever agreements they may have had. Um, you know, 20 years after her death, the kitchen was never remodeled outside of the color she chose, because that was Doris's colors.
Mhm.
You know, so I saw that. I saw the adornment, you know, and then I also saw the abuse, you know, from my mom. And even that, my dad still loved her, and wanted to reconcile. But I didn't have that frame of mind to ask those questions. So now, as part of my ancestral work, it's it's spending time with them in dreams, in creating space to hear from them in a supernatural way. Um, and it, you know, it may be audible, it may be something I read, it may be a remembrance of something from my childhood. And that's how I have to do the work, to say, okay, grandma, I'm looking at this picture. What were you feeling? Because you don't look happy. That there's that forced smile, like
Yes.
I'm here because I need to be, but I really, I'm not present. So unfortunately for me, the speaking to the women in my family is on a spiritual context, but speaking with my mom, as she's gotten older, she's starting to talk more, and she'll say, like, I remember when you all were children and X, Y, and Z. And sometimes in my head, I'm like, you remember that? Because my perception was she didn't seem all that involved. But for her to say something about her children that I would not have noticed shows that she did care, and that my mom suffered in silence, but she's the one who taught me forgiveness. But I need to know what it is that you were learned, what you were taught, what you believed when you were a child that made you believe that you weren't worth it. So you married the first man who said hello and said sweet nothings to you. And she'll tell you, I made a mistake with your dad, because she wasn't whole enough to recognize who he was. Yes, he gave her 3 beautiful children, but what he took her through, that's because she didn't have the strength to say, I'm worth more than this, and I deserve more than this. And we can talk about those things now. But the other women in my family, I don't necessarily have that live connection, but it really starts with who am I? One of the programs that I start in Mirrored Vision Coaching is called Who Are You? Because we ask that and we take on the role that is prescribed to us, but that doesn't speak to the nature of who I really am. And so
Yes.
when I ask women, who are you? They really kind of stop and say, I don't know.
Right. And that,
I don't know.
Jacqueline, first of all, I love the fact that you are talking about ancestral veneration and what that means and what it looks like, and how it plays such an important role in your healing and in your life period. Because, I come from a very Christian background. Obviously, I'm not anymore. But the thing is that with ancestral veneration, it's crazy because we walk around, our children go to schools named after people of non-color, okay, after white men, after we ride on roads named after conquistadors, and named after the people that have literally been responsible for the abuse and the temperature of our society and how it treats women of color and Black women specifically. And so a lot of times we fall into this paradigm where we think that, oh, ancestral veneration is not holy. Dude, I'm just like,
if you don't do the work,
if you don't do that work, if you don't connect with your ancestors, if you really want to come from this aspect of like, well, we've been taught that that's not okay, you don't have to go very far. Look at your kid's school. Look at the road. Look at the street you live on. Look at the name of your city. Look at the names of these places. This is ancestral veneration by those that tell us that ancestral veneration is not of God. Let me tell you something. Ancestral veneration changes lives.
Yes.
Some of the things that I tell my I also have a mentorship program. I tell my mentees is just like, listen, if you're going to be in this mentorship, certain rituals are required, and ancestral veneration is one of them. Because if you're truly going to self-actualize and get yourself past this hump, this place in life, because as Black women, we all come to this place where we feel like, I'm missing something ain't right. It hasn't been right for a long time, and I don't know who to go to because nobody's ever told me, let me in on this secret.
Yep.
I'm just like, it starts there. because you are the hope, the dream, the blessing of your ancestors. And I tell them, healing, self-healing is an act of revolution. It is an act of revolution. It is an act of ancestral veneration.
There's a reason they didn't want slaves to gather.
That part.
Help. I mean, there's power in gathering. You know, and you know, and I don't know the Bible like that. So, you know, listen, watch this. Don't, you know, give me a bunch of comments about this and that. But, you know, I know that it says where two or more are gathered. That's the power in that prayer.
That part.
That so many people knew about how, you know, things they consider witchcraft or the like.
The blood of Jesus.
Right there in the Bible.
Well, that's a whole nother topic. So what's
it is.
I wanted to go into that. I had an episode planned for that for this season. And I thought to myself, I need the audience to get to know me and trust me a little bit first before I go there. Because see, the thing of it is, there are some things that are real sacred to Black folks. And white Jesus is one of them. And when you start saying anything related to Christianity or white Jesus, and I was raised Christian, I still identify with a lot of Christian beliefs and concepts. But whenever you start asking questions, it freaks people out. It makes people very uncomfortable. And I think that, you know, one of the things that God has said to me, when I feel uncomfortable, I really need to, that's when I need to meditate.
Yeah.
That's when I need to meditate. That's when I need to pray about it. And my answers will come to me. And once that answer comes, I won't feel those, you know, that anxiety, that uncertainty about it. You might still be scared because fear, that's what comes when you're doing something revolutionary, when you're doing something new, when you're stepping outside that comfort zone, you know, when you're taking off those restraints, you're going to be nervous because you don't know how it's going to be received. But that doesn't mean you don't do it. You don't question it. But that's, you know, that's a whole, I want people to understand the origins of things. Because if you understand the origins of things, a lot of this other stuff makes sense because it's all connected. People will tell you, you know, that this is over here and this is over there. You know, Christians are over here and Muslims are over here. And it's, there's more connection in things than they would have us believe. But people we've been programmed and I have those conversations. So I plan to dig into that one later, because that's a whole series. Really.
Yes, it is. It really is.
It is.
I actually told people that if you don't want to talk about ancestral veneration, let's not talk about the Old Testament. The Old Testament was literally describing all of the ancestors of Jesus the Christ, right?
Yes.
So when you consider that, it's like you just have to, you have to think your way through religion, just like you have to think your way through spirituality, through any form of magic, through any form of evolution or, you know, ascension. You have to think your way through that. And so let's be real about what we're reading. Let's be real about what we're talking about. Let's don't just take it as, oh, well, so-and-so said this about it and it's really spiritually insightful. Does your spiritual insight make sense?
Dissect it. You must dissect it. Ask questions. You know, Jesus was a revolutionary. He flipped tables at the temple. It's like people forget that. It's just like everybody wants to quote the nice Martin Luther King quotes, but people also, they forget that at the end, he said, I fear I may have led my people into a burning building.
That part.
You know, it was that other side of it. And so there is a yin and yang, you know, to things. There's dark, there's light, there's a place for all of it. It's not that one thing is bad and one thing is all good. You know, once we really start dissecting the origins of things, we can get to the bottom of who's defining strength in this way and why. Because particularly as it relates to women, because, you know, our role of being kept in the home has been a tool of control from the beginning. Some people will tell you that that's because Eve bit the apple, that we're, you know, damned and this is why we suffer and all those things. And I'm not challenging that. That's not my point. But what I'm saying is the tools that people use to justify some of the things that women have to endure.
Yes.
And make people think that you can't question it because
exactly.
and you should question it
You
when
should always question
it's
it.
for you.
But if we have a religious system that discourages questioning, when it's time to ask those deep, heavy questions,
yes,
we tend to we think we're doing something wrong to question the authority, or we're in essence questioning God. And
Yeah.
so who are we to question God? But if your God doesn't want you to be free and to be happy and to be whole and to live authentically, I don't want your God, because my God is he's trying to give me abundance over and over and over.
Yeah.
So I want that God. And that God says questions. That's why we have free will.
Yeah.
That's why free will exists, but it's breaking down those paradigms that becomes very uncomfortable and unsafe for some people and terrifying. But when you get through it, it's like the dam has been broken.
And that's exactly right, Jacqueline, because when you say the dam has been broken, I saw that flood. I saw that flood in my life. There were so many times when I have always kind of been, and Charlene and I were actually talking about this. When I was in college, I hit my head. I was at the library. I hit my head and I literally got, the diagnosis was anterograde as well as retrograde amnesia. So I forgot my childhood. I forgot my ABCs and 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And they saw me go through the process of having to learn everything again. And the anger that I felt about not having my mind and not having those memories. The thing about it is, though, is that it led me down a path of just self-actualization, of just choosing whoever the fuck I wanted to be. Pardon my language. Whoever the hell I wanted to be.
You can say it.
Whoever the hell I wanted to be, and try different experiences. Some were on the good side, some on the not so great side. But the thing is, I learned that good, bad, evil, and good were just judgments. They're not actual things. They're judgments. You could say robbing a bank is evil. But if you rob the bank because your family's hungry, is it still evil? Or was it something that you did what you had to do? And so I think when we start to question these things, and when we start to question our yeses and our nos, when we start to analyze why we're saying no, because it's important to say no, but I tell people, you must be cognizant. You must have the background story of why you're saying no, because as a woman, we are literally training society. We are retraining these minds on how to deal with us. So when I say no, while I don't have to explain it, I need to know within myself, because that is my self-empowerment. That is where true power comes from. It comes from within. And so I so agree with what you're saying there, and take it even a step further, saying like, you are responsible for your freedom. You are responsible for the freedom you choose to operate under. You are responsible. So it's a double-edged sword when it comes to freedom, because with sovereignty, right, there is like, oh yay, I'm unfettered. But the other edge of sovereignty is I'm responsible for the choices I choose to make to maintain that freedom.
Yep.
And
Agreed.
it's just and it makes you analyze, it makes you question religion, it makes you question authority, because as a sovereign being, you are the authority. You are the authority, and you are also the one responsible for how you show up with that authority and what that means. It's and you know what, it's crazy because we're talking about women, but I actually learned sovereignty from my husband, and how he shows up. My husband has been an entrepreneur now for most of his adult life, and he studied with the Moors. He's also a Mason, all these different things. But one thing that he learned was self-responsibility in a true way. And I remember when I met him, people are often like, oh my God, you guys are so beautiful together. You're so beautiful together. You're so beautiful together. And I'm just like, because when I met him, I felt quiet in my soul. Does that make sense? I felt the space of meditation in my soul. Like, and I tell people now, they were like, well, what's your key to a happy marriage? And I'm like, sovereignty, self-actualization, find the quiet in my soul. That quiet time I spend in my meditation maintains my relationships.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the day he told me, he was just like, when you get into a relationship, you are literally continuing the relationship with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I understood from what he said was that, Tanita, you're worthy of your own intentions and thoughts and expectations and attention. It made me start thinking about my thoughts. What am I thinking about? Who am I becoming? What is this? What is this life? And it's a beautiful thing. And I bring him up, even though this is a discussion on women, but I bring it up because it was such a valuable lesson. And it really helped me to get into a true understanding of what it meant to be Godhead energy, to be goddess energy, to be completely and 100% self-sufficiency. And I think that's really what we're leaning into. And that's really what COVID is making us. And that's why you see so many women now starting their own businesses, just trying to do whatever, tapping into their talents, deciding, hey, you know what? I don't know how to do this, but I know how to do that. And I'm going to just do it. You know what I'm saying? And it's almost like going back to the times when we came up out of slavery. And if you knew how to cook, you sold a plate. You had a dinner party, you know what I'm saying? A paid dinner party. If you knew music, you sang. You went down to the local shop and started singing. If you knew this, if you knew that. And it's such a wonderful time, and it's scary, and it's new, and it's just, but it's so familiar. And it's forcing us all to really get in touch with ourselves. And I love y'all. Oh my God.
I love how I love how you did bring up your husband, and and that you can recognize how, it's a partnership. It's a learned, you learned something from him that allowed you to see your divinity, and to stand in that. And, when I think that type of conversation becomes necessary when we are, as, if we're, wanting to be with, have a husband, what are we looking for? Are we sometimes, we tend to be with people who model like our fathers or the men in our family that may not have been the best examples. But I loved what you said about how you're quiet. And I think some people would take that as like being submissive, though that is not necessarily a bad thing. But I get what you're saying in that I don't have to work to prove myself to him, because he sees it in me, and the God in him recognizes the God in me. And there's no battle. There's no, I don't have to prove, I don't have to fight. I don't have to be, I don't have to be the one with the pants or the breadwinner, whatever. And when, I'm pushing 40, and trust me, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. But a lot of my girlfriends are 40 and up, and they're still single. And I think sometimes those conversations still happen around finding that validation from men and from other people, and not connecting with someone who can say, I see the God in you. You're worthy. We complete each other. We don't, maybe not complete, but we complement. And maybe it is a completion and a compliment. But there's no need to struggle, because in our own right, in our own divinities, we are whole people, and we're whole people working together. So I love how
That's a
you're
good
able to
one.
see that and acknowledge that and express that. And his sovereignty doesn't diminish yours. You know, it like
It enhances it.
it
It does.
enhances. It just, I love it. And I know so many times, like as women, especially those of us that are kind of like evolved in the sense of knowing kind of who we are and we're walking in our power, we tend to be medicine for people. And we tend to attract those men who, they need a little bit of balm,
Yes.
and it's like
projects.
yes. And
Let
it's
me
like,
tell you,
I don't want to have to be on all the time, or to have to be that balm for you. I don't want to have to be that example that you can have it all. Or yes, I love that, I can be a motivation, but I need you to do your own work to realize your own value. And I don't want to have to always tell you that, because you're not. There's a difference between telling you and affirming you and you not knowing it, or you knowing it and you're just in a spot where, but if your thought process is continuously repeating this, I'm not worth it, I'm not good enough, I can't keep being a balm to that, because that's work you got to do, bruh. Like, that's not mine.
And and that's just that's absolutely correct. And you were right. We are complements to each other, because one thing about completing each other, a lot of times we wind up being the bigger piece of the puzzle. So I never tell my clients, I don't tell the women that I mentor that you're looking for your completion. No, you are complete. And compliment is absolutely correct, Jacqueline, because I'll never forget, right? I have always been spoiled in my relationships, and I've been married a few times. Like, no shame in my game, right? I've been married a few times, and I've always been the one to be like the breadwinner, but also because I'm the breadwinner, I get whatever I want. I'm the breadwinner, I get whatever I want, right?
Yeah.
But when I met my husband, he was just like, he was like, listen, I don't agree with your spending habits. And I was just like, I tried to pull this unhealed I tried to pull this unhealed motion where I was just like, well, how could you say that, and blah 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 blah. And he was like, oh, listen, we don't have to actually be a match. Excuse me? You know what I mean? I was like, excuse me, what do you mean we don't have to be a match? And he was just like, we don't have to be a match on this. But I'm telling you right now, that unhealed place in you that thinks you're going to find the satisfaction in shopping because you're unhappy with what you actually do, that's not going to survive here. Because we work off real. We work off the real. He was like, this is the board for realism. He was like, that energy has no place here. And so he literally sent me into shadow work. He sent me into a place to heal myself. And so what I tell my clients is like, listen, there are going to be places in you that make yourself uncomfortable, that give you that unsettled feeling in you. And you need to address them. You need to address them. Yes, embrace them, but embrace them with the concept of dissolution. You are dissolving those areas of you that no longer serve you. And so when we get into relationships, one of the things I tell my mentees is that when you get into a relationship, remember, you are dating yourself. You are married to yourself. Your process doesn't stop. Your process cannot stop. If you want a good relationship, if you want a relationship that meets those levels that you're at, you have to be thoroughly involved with yourself. You have to be at every single level, because nobody is going to meet the standard if you're meeting the standard on their behalf. Doesn't work. It doesn't work. Girl, I don't know where this man came from. Listen, he is a whole vibe. But the reason I love him is that constantly leading me back to myself. And it helps me. It's very empowering. But I want to tell women, listen, I didn't get here overnight. I done been married. All right. I ain't like them. Okay. I have been married. It did not work out. And I've tried so many different types of relationship. I've been polyamorous. I've been this. I've been that. Listen, the fact of the matter is that all of those things were specific to me and to my process of becoming who I am. I am the goal. You, Jacqueline, are the goal. Charlene, you are the goal. I am the goal. And when I grasped that, I met somebody who was just like, yeah, that's great, because I'm the goal too. Okay. But, it's funny because I tell people we're alone together. We're alone together. I'm still singular.
Yes.
I'm still a single entity created in the image of the universe. I am divine. I am divine. And those around me support my divinity. You feel me?
And there's so much power. I mean, we could do a whole sermon and session on that, because some people, and there are some things I want to unpack, because I know a lot of people here, they listen to sound bites, but they don't really absorb it. And so one of the things that you said was, you're dating yourself. And one thing I want to clarify for people in the audience, that doesn't mean that you're being self-absorbed. That doesn't mean that you're being like, it's all about me. That means that you're not losing that sense of yourself. You continue to do the work on yourself. Even though you're in this relationship, you keep working on you. Working on you needs to be a priority, because that's the only way the relationship can continue to blossom and nurture. And people in the concept of you complete me, I love that both of you ladies made the distinction there. No, it's about complementing. It's not about completion, because you need to fill that circle yourself. Yeah. So that when you get that other person, y'all stack those circles. That's where there's so much strength in that. And, and part of the challenge with perpetuating this strong, independent woman myth, and there's, a lot of it is when we talk about the whys, and that's something I want us to talk about in a second, why women have to be strong and independent. Part of that, there's some necessity to it, but with that comes this, it's tough to shed that, to do that process that you just described, to meet a great partner and not be able to receive that partner saying to you, okay, I recognize you're the breadwinner, but I don't like the way you're spending the money. A lot of people will say, I've been doing this all by myself. You're not going to tell me what I'm going to do. This is mine over here, because that can be a consequence of being strong and independent for a long time. Yeah. I'll be 40 next month, and I've been independent and alone for a long time. I've never lived with one of my boyfriends. I've never had to budget with somebody else. I've never had to really consult not with a partner. I did with my parents, but with a partner on what I was going to do. Because I feel like when I'm dating, really, I'm single until I'm married. And so that's a different mindset. So there's always options and possibilities. Even though I may be monogamous, if that's what we say we're going to be, you're still single until you're married. So I don't have to have that level of let me check in with you about how I'm spending my money, how I'm spending my time. And so how do you overcome that hurdle when you've been trained to be independent and strong for so long? It's simple things as, I'm upset. I find myself sometimes, I will call one of my girlfriends before I call the guy I'm dating when I'm vulnerable or upset. And that's when you should be going to your partner. But we haven't, I didn't grow up seeing vulnerability necessarily being acceptable for women. I saw vulnerability being exploited. If you open, and even as an adult, I've seen it, if you're vulnerable, to the wrong man, then you're showing him. People will say, don't tell him everything about you. Don't tell him your history. He's going to use it against you. And so we get trained and trained and trained to be strong, hold it in, don't show them that you're weak, don't submit. And so we also need to talk about the definition of submission, because I want to submit because I believe in submission. I believe it's the natural order of things. in a relationship, because you're supposed to submit to each other. If you're putting me first in terms of trying to make sure my needs are met, and you're helping push me towards self actualization and maximizing my potential in life, and I'm doing the same thing for you, we're both winning. That, to me, that's my definition of submission. So the first thing I want us to talk about is the necessity of being a strong, independent woman. How do we get there? We've talked a little bit about patriarchal constructs, societal constructs, but in this day and time, why are women still embracing this "I don't need anybody" mentality?
To be honest, I think that it's because in many ways, because you're right, we have discussed patriarchal this and patriarchal that, and these different constructs. But I think that while all of those go into shaping who we are, we do a lot of this. See a need, fill a need, right? See a need, fill a need. See a need, fill a need. But when you constantly, they teach you to do that with your binoculars on, with glasses on. So things are further away than they may appear, right? And see a need, fill a need, see a need, fill a need. And then we have television. See a need, fill a need, see a need, fill a need. And then we have cell phones and social media. See a need, fill a need. When do we say that in the mirror? When are you seeing yourself? If all you are ever looking at is the church, the news, social media, reality television, when are you seeing your need to fill it? It really requires a great deal of dedication to look internally, to look at yourself. It's like this. My prices aren't necessarily the cheapest prices out there on the market, but the people that I get as a result of that pricing are truly committed to the process of seeing themselves, of journeying into themselves to find their root. Until you are willing to take on that process and journey to find your root, you will constantly be looking through these binoculars at everyone else around you, at everything else around you. See a need, fill a need, see a need, fill a need. But what about you? What level of mental focus are you willing to put there? And I think one of those things that we have to realize is that marriage has to stop being the goal. Marriage is not a goal. Listen, y'all.
Ouch.
Okay. Listen, I know. Marriage is not the goal. Integrity is the goal. And I don't mean integrity like just honesty, right? Because like I said, good and evil, it's a judgment, right? I mean integrity as in structural integrity is the goal. When you have, like I said, when you find your root, everything begins to grow properly. Things begin to blossom and bloom, and you're able to spread your seeds and see the world populate around you with images of you. Marriage is not the goal. Personal integrity is the goal. Personal unification is the goal. Your divinity comes when you see your need and you fill it. When you see your need and you fill it. You fill it. You take on the role of caretaker as well as lover, as well as you take on those roles within yourself for yourself as husband, as like Charlene. One thing I've always loved about you is even in college at our young ages, you were budgeting for yourself, you were managing your money, you were doing your thing, you were pulling together women from different, you were living your purpose. So when you ask, like, how do you do that in a marriage when you've been single all this time? You are whole. It's respect. It's a matter of respect, understanding their input. It's just respect. It's like, yo, I respect my husband. He respects me. I respect his input. I chose to be with him. I respect that shit. I respect it. All right. I get it. but it's because of personal integrity, because I take the time to work on this, to work on me, so his opinions no longer feel like an attack on me. They feel like potentially valuable input, and I can accept it or I cannot.
Right.
And as it pertains to submission, one thing I found, submission is really just agreement. Do I agree with you?
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. We don't have to agree on everything. We really don't. And I don't have to stay. And if he's doing something that irritates me, like leaving his gloves all over the damn house. He wears a lot of because he works with his hands, so he wears a lot of rubber gloves. He leaves them damn gloves everywhere I go. I see rubber gloves around my house. I'm like, oh my God, this is not a hospital. Okay, just stop. Right, but the fact of the matter is, I don't have to constantly be looking at him. I don't have to look at those rubber gloves. I can be like, oh, pick it up.
Right, and keep it
And
moving.
every time he drops it, pick it up. And the fact of the matter is, he's also an adult and he is sovereign in his being. So I got to respect that. And sometimes I just got to take my hat off and be like, all right, you got it, boss. That's on you. Got nothing to do with me. Mind my business. And when you find your business, you mind it. And the others don't really bother me anymore. I just be like, yo, you left some gloves over here. Okay. Rubber gloves. Like.
So when you both are working with your clients, because you both do coaching work, and you have someone present to you, with just challenges for life. We've talked to, Tanita, you addressed, I love just boiling down submission to just, it's an agreement. It's an agreement, is people. And I think a lot of feminism, has gone to this other realm of, in order, to say that I believe that women should be treated fairly and with equity, that means that a man can't tell me anything, that I have to be completely independent of a man's power, and I don't know that that's necessarily the intention, and or that that's even healthy or that's even appropriate. Your partner, whoever you choose as your partner, there should be that mutual respect. Like you said, you chose them. Why don't you value their input? So when the two of you have clients that come to you and they're struggling, because a lot of times the struggles we have, we're dealing with childhood traumas and we're dealing with the struggles of balancing the day-to-day pulls. What's pulling on me at work? What's pulling on me inside from those traumas from the past? What the traumas I'm dealing with now, from the needs of my kids, my parents. And we've got a lot of people who are taking care of their parents and their kids. In the Black community, we take care of everybody's kids. You taking care of your kids, your grandkids. You might have a cousin that's staying with you, or some kid in the neighborhood that's been couch surfing and they're at your house too. How do you, when you have a client that comes to you and they've got all of these things pulling at them, how do you break it down for them, a sort of pathway? What do you tackle first in this woman being everything to everybody? What's your first approach with her?
First, I guess with me, when I have a client who is presenting the laundry list you presented, life, I think I start with I like to do breathing. I like to check in. And I start with a breathing exercise because that is our litmus test as we move forward, to remind her that she is a living, breathing being and that she is important. And so when she's feeling stressed, when she's feeling, you know, overwhelmed, she needs to breathe. That it seems very basic, but
Wow.
when we don't breathe, you know, we're tight. We,
You can't
you
think,
know,
you pass out.
can't think. No. So I typically walk through my clients with a breathing exercise, and I say, okay, that's what we're going to do. Whenever you feel, when you start talking to me and you start tensing up, and I'm going to tell you to breathe. And then they're like, oh, I didn't realize I was holding my breath. And so I may ask them a series of questions like, you know, what they're looking to address, what they feel like, you know, they need to do. A lot of times those first initial sessions don't even talk about the laundry list of things that they have, because going back to where I said my program is called Who Are You? I think I really do start with that framework. Because yes, you have these different roles that you wear, but I'm concerned about who you are and how you see yourself. And then from there, we're able to dig deeper into some of the things that, you know, are plaguing them, where when they're asked, who are you? And they really kind of sit with that and they breathe through that. And we may do some tapping or some other type of therapeutic tools. They get angry because I'm somebody's wife and he doesn't respect me. And I do all these things and I lost who I am. And once they realize, like, I am not happy about something, it could be the rubber gloves. But in essence, that what's buried deep down, what's very deep down is that they do not feel respected. They don't feel safe around the man that they chose, because he's not seeing her for who she is, or there's these expectations, right? They could be cultural expectations, or, wives are supposed to do X, Y, and Z. And instead of talking to his wife to find out what she wants and who she is, he's putting outside expectations on her. So now her burden is heavy, and so when she realizes, like, okay, I'm mad about this. And in order for everybody, for me to feel safe in my home, I need to develop a self-care plan, or I need to get a therapist, because I'm realizing that something that happened in my childhood or my adulthood or wherever changed the trajectory. And so that's how I approach, but it's usually they come for something.
Yeah.
Because it's not what they may not know.
Right.
They may not know that it's something deeper. So I kind of start from the back and then come in, because who do you say you are? Who do you say you are? Who do people respond to you as? How do you want them to respond to you? You have to say who you are. So if you want to continue to be a wife, but you're not happy how things are going, what needs to change for you? And then, sometimes it's those building up some esteem and working on our throat chakra, and because all that is combined, but we're trying to put the pieces together to get them in the road to lead on their own terms, and to be able to address those things that they're coming in for. But I'm concerned about who you are, because that's in essence how you respond to everybody else. And if you don't have a clear picture about who you are, then the people in your life are not going to have a clear picture of who you are, and they're going to prescribe what they think that you should be.
Yeah. What I love most about what you just said is one, you worked in the title of the podcast on there,
Oh,
and two, one of the reasons, and I didn't come up with the name. Actually, Concept Branding, this amazing branding marketing company based in Atlanta, they came up with the name and everything for the podcast and the blog. But the reason it really appealed to me is because all of these discussions, they're related to empowering women to living life on their terms. And when you talked about your process, it's just like, wow, that this is why we all, even if there's no triggering event, because as you said, most of the time people go, they seek therapy because there's a triggering event, and they think, okay, I need to get this treated. And there a lot of times people are looking for a band-aid. They're not
yeah.
anticipating, like you said, when I first went to therapy years ago after the death of my father and a couple of other close people, I just went because I was having panic attacks and I just wanted to be fixed so we could stop the panic attacks. And the first few sessions, we didn't even talk about the panic attacks. And I was kind
Mhm.
of annoyed because I'm like, we're not fixing this yet. But she had told me she wanted me to start taking walks every day. And she's, what do you like to listen to music? And I was like, this lady is a psychiatrist. This is what I'm paying for, and she was talking to me about me. And she was doing the process that you just described, getting to know me and helping me get to rediscover me. And
Mhm.
that's an ongoing process that I think people have to understand about therapy, because I've been in therapy since 2008. And some people will say, well, you shouldn't need it anymore. Nope. Your seasons change. You
And
evolve. It's
it's
ongoing.
it definitely is. And I'm sorry to interrupt. Um, so when I was speaking earlier today about how I had a vaginal steam session,
Mhm.
most people see it as what they see on TV. And the method that I'm trained under and that I prescribe to, it's very transformative. So when people come in, because that's another way that I service women, and they don't know they're coming because they saw it on TV, and they want to know what it's about. They want the external benefits, but when I sit at their feet and start asking them questions, and the tears start rolling, and the thoughts start rolling in their head, it's like, oh, this is more than what I thought. So today, for my own session, I released a trauma that had me questioning a lot of things in my life. And part of what I have a counseling background. My degree is in human services counseling, and so I know the code words. I know how to functionally, move forward. And I work for the company. It's called the Womb Sauna, I, and so the founder is giving me my session, and um, she said, "Are are you depressed?" And I'm like, I don't think so. She was like, "Have you heard of functional depression?" I was like, "Well, you know what? Maybe, maybe I am.
Mhm.
High functioning. I can move through it." And so after my aunt was telling me, you need to see a therapist. Like, you need to grieve, get the years of abuse and, all of that out and process it. But today, especially with everything that's going on in the world, 2020, just my life in general, a lot of things have been coming up. And so she had recommended, like, okay, part of your regimen is going to be you need to have you need to get a therapist, consider a therapist. Um, and the trauma that I was starting to release was questioning my sexuality. And I had believed that I was in between two spaces, when what I did not want to believe was that I had gone through, I basically have been molested and not knowing that's what it was. But now that it's like everything is starting to make sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the things that I struggled with, like, why do I have a problem with men saying I love you? Part of that is because I don't consider myself love, right? Those are some of the things that those internal struggles. But I was hearing different messages in my mind about what I had been learned throughout the years. And I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, well, maybe this kind of explains certain things in my life.
Yeah.
Maybe this explains why I have a difficult time committing to men or to to move in certain ways. And the need to have a therapist is not because I'm crazy, because I'm not. It's my self-care.
Yes. Yes.
It is my self-care because in that, the things where I'm struggling with identifying with or accepting or even moving past unconsciously, having someone who can support my mental well-being as I unearth these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I went through today may change the trajectory of my life. It may not. It may just clarify some things. It may just say, okay, I can check in with that 5-year-old me
Yes.
that was hurt, that was abused, that was exposed to something that I was not ready for and made me think that I should be a certain way when my 5-year-old is saying, no, that's not it. Let's heal that.
Yeah.
So you can live, bring us forward in the way we need to live. So therapy is not because we were crazy. It's really to maintain us.
Yes.
And that is, I'm like, okay, where does my insurance say I can go? Because this is my commitment to myself, right? Because I am at a place where I'm like, hell yeah, I need to be loved, and not just because but it's because that's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I am. And so I've been going through these different emotions of, not of being afraid of letting people in. And it's really because of lies that I was told when I was little, and I'm letting those narratives go. It's beliefs that I've heard from people that I just gave a narrative to myself when they're really not true. So I need to unlearn some of those things.
Yeah.
Right. And so being able to be at a space where I can do that for myself allows me to be able to share that experience with my clients and just women in general, because as we're all on this call together, is the desire, the gift to want to pour back into Black women and for us to live full, authentic, juicy,
Yes.
beautiful, just abundant lives.
Yeah.
Abundant lives. And if I can't do it for myself,
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
how am I going to share it with someone else? No, I don't have all the answers. And just because I have things that I deal with doesn't mean that, like, we're all human. We're going to go through those things. Life does not say you get to go through this and you don't. But the fact that I can go through it and I can see it for myself and I can see it in you, sis.
Yeah.
Let me help you.
Yeah.
Let me help you. I'm not going to do the work for you.
Yes.
but I can help you. I can show you how I went through it, but I can give you some tools to help you get through your own. You, though, have to do the work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a beautiful testimony. I want to say testimony, but I feel like that doesn't give it enough crowning glory of what you just said, Jacqueline. Like, such a beautiful goddess story, such a beautiful becoming. It's such a beautiful becoming. It gave me chills. I'm sitting here like, oh, because we often do find ourselves in those spaces. We find ourselves in these places in life that were unsafe for us, whether by choice or by circumstance. And those things sit in us. They sit in us. I call it the hole of the rabbit hole of never ending meanness, right? Like, I have a rabbit hole of never ending meanness, of the unsafe places I've allowed myself to be in life, of the unsafe thoughts that I've allowed to ruminate within me. And, ever so often these things shoot up, these things come up, and it's just like, oh shit, I hate the rabbit hole of unending meanness. I hate it, right? But it's such a release. And as you were telling your story, I felt the release. It was like I was sitting there with you. And you're absolutely right. Therapy is not because you're crazy. Therapy is because you're human. You're having a human experience. And you have a right. It is a birthright to have human care for that humanness, for that human part of you. And to your question, Charlene, what do I do with my, she's absolutely right. You sit and have them breathe, because most of us are like, you know what I mean? Just barely skimming the surface of our own life force to try and maintain these relationships and maintain these responsibilities and maintain these things. And as you said, that's the thing about yoni steaming that I love so much. And I can't wait to get the name of your company and everything, because yoni steaming, people think like, I had somebody tell me, well, that's not an ancient practice. I'm like, you have no idea what an ancient practice is. They used to have hot springs that they sat in, honey. Okay, listen, there are things that you have no idea about. But the yoni steam is such, I tell people, it's like this. You are honoring that part of you, that womanhood of womanhood that has been so disrespected. That part that has been the butt of jokes, that has been the butt of, that has been the comedian's point. You know what I mean? That has been said to be weak, even though it's literally the strongest organ in the human body.
Yeah.
It is. You are honoring that space. And if you look at it as nothing other than symbolism, you're still going to be moved. You're still going to be touched. You're still going to have such an experience. And I remember the first time I ever yoni steamed, and I just sat there and cried. Oh God, I cried. Lord have mercy. Listen, Charlene was right. An abundance of emotion in me, okay? Like abundance of joy and abundance of emotion. Like I just sat there and cried, because it was just like, when have I ever done this? When have I ever allowed myself the honor of honoring my most sacred core? And we get to these places, like I said, the rabbit hole of never ending meanness, and these things shoot up and we tamp them back down. We send them back down the rabbit hole. We're just like, oh, that's not important right now. Well, when is it important? When is it important for you to actually take a deep breath? When?
So it sounds like we need to redirect our strength.
Yes.
Pouring all our strength into taking care of everybody in the village.
Yes.
We need to redirect that strength into learning how to be vulnerable and learning how to release.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily that we need to, to abandon being strong women, but we need to redefine it. So that it's more of a healing thing, so that it is more therapeutic, so that it helps us get towards that self-actualization.
Structural integrity.
Yes.
Structural, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical integrity.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's the work that I tell my clients they're worthy of. You are worthy of your work. You're worthy of your structural integrity.
Yes.
You know, you're worthy of that.
Yes, you are worthy of that investment. We invest in everything else. We invest in houses. We invest in all these degrees. You know,
Okay.
we invest in building up somebody else's company. You know, we invest in all this other stuff. We have to do the work, have the strength and the courage that both of you ladies have talked about. I mean, Jackie, your story was just like
Everything.
courage and strength. Courage and strength to allow yourself to first make that step to go there. Because that's to walk through that door knowing you're going to have to shed some layers. That's courage.
Yeah.
And then to actually do the work and then to share it with others. It's levels to this.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
it's so
it is.
courageous. So you are brave. I'm proud of you. I thank you.
That is beautiful, sis. And then you came on the show and talked about it. Let me tell you something. Oh my gosh, I feel so blessed that you were willing to share that with us.
Thank you. Thank you. But you know that I think that is that's my authenticity.
Yes.
You know, because it's not just my story.
Yeah.
It's another Black woman's story too. And what I have been anointed with, I've been charged with, is to create those spaces for women to release all that shit.
Yeah.
You know, I may not be the one I may create the space where they come in and have an experience that lets them know, like, okay, yes, you can be vulnerable. You are safe here. There's no judgments here. But then now I have Tanita on my team to be like, okay, this is where you need to go to work through this.
Yes.
But in order for me to show up, to use the gift that I have been blessed with,
yes,
I have no choice but to be open. And I cannot not be like it. I can't, you know. And it was funny because on the pod, so I didn't say her name earlier. Her name is Tama Aziz Serwa. She's the founder of the Womb Sauna. She was like, you know, she was like, I see your priestess in you sitting in front of me. And it's interesting because I've always known that I was a spiritual being, obviously, but it's deeper than just, okay, you know, it's deeper than a coach. There's something deeper there. And as I was sitting on the pot and I was experiencing these emotions earlier today, when my warrior comes up, listen,
it gets real.
And it was like this righteous anger. Just, I was like, okay, I want to take the head of the chick who did this to me. I want to protect anybody else who has, you know, when I meet women and we form a bond, a connection, and they're under my cloak, it's warrior. And I think warriors don't always have to be on the protest line or, you know, but that warrior is interceding on your behalf, is going to the ancestral side to cover you, to protect you, to ask the ancestors and the spirit guides to remove what is hindering you from living the life that you want to live. That's what I do. And that is, and I have to, I can't not share that. And I've hidden that for so long because, I had to be what people wanted me to be. But no, you're going to get this goddess energy who is going to love you and encourage you and support you and hold you accountable, just like I have those women in that circle that do that for me. So I can continue to show up in the way that I need to, but there are times when being human too. So I thank you, Charlene, for having this platform, because someone's going to hear my story. Someone's going to hear Tanita's story about her and her partnership with her husband that's going to expose them to something that they've been thinking about, but they didn't know it was possible.
Yes. And yeah, that's absolutely right, Jacqueline. And the thing is like, I know we're talking about how do we get to that place of setting boundaries and understanding, like where to say no, where to say yes. And one of the things that I tell my clients, it's owning your story.
Yes.
Own your story. You want to see a boundary pop up real quick? Think about something that happened to you or some space that you stayed in when you knew it was no longer safe for you and it was no longer good for you. And somebody interrupt that thought process. You want to see your lioness self pop up?
Yeah.
Hey.
Okay. Yes. Let me tell you something. When I'm in my shadow work, when I'm in my quiet time, and not even my kids get to stand in that space.
Mm-hmm.
My story time. It's my story. It's my thoughts. It's my opportunity to look at myself and decide what part of me remains the same and what part of me. I'm literally doing subconscious surgery on myself right now.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's my story. I get to own this story, and every part of this story gets to be my mentor. She says, pain to power. My pain into my power.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you find the boundaries. That's where you find the no.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's it. No. Full stop. No. Like when I look at past relationships, I was like, I will never accept that type of friendship again. No.
Mm-hmm.
And so anytime I see it around me, anytime I smell it in the air, I'm just like, that's not for me. No. Let me just go ahead and put the brakes on that right now, because I'm not revisiting that, because I've already experienced that in my story and I don't want it. I decided it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
When you learn to set up expectations within yourself for your own responses to things, when you set up, like, I don't believe in expectations on other people, right? Because people have their own agendas. They're doing their own thing. They're doing their own thing, and they're right. But I have expectations of how I show up for myself.
Yeah.
So if I think somebody is doing me wrong, I have an expectation that I'll speak up and be like, yo, this doesn't happen.
Yeah. I
have this expectation of myself. And because the thing is, you don't get to control anybody else. You just don't. It's just not how. That's not how your magic will thrive. And as women who have been taught to be every woman, to everything, to everybody, we think that gives us control.
Yeah.
When in all actuality, your control, your power lies within you. It lies in self-mastery. It lies in self-awareness and acknowledgement. So if my boyfriend says, if my husband says, or my boyfriend, I'm just speaking what if, right? If I have a boyfriend and I don't like him, that the fact that he came home at 2:00 at night, in the morning or whatever, right? My thing is that I'm going to tell him, yo, I don't appreciate you coming home that late. That's not something that I would expect from my relationship. Like, I don't like that. And then he gets the opportunity of either saying like, well, too bad, or sure, baby, no problem, I get it, or well, I don't give a fuck. Okay, then we ain't gotta be a match.
Right.
Okay, then my responsibility to myself is to say, yeah, I'm out then. Like, I don't play that shit. Like, that's not for me. Right. Like, fuck that. Okay, you're right. You know what? Right. I get it. You don't have the responsibility to care. I do.
Right.
And I care. and I care about me because I know how that made me feel in my past, and it's not okay with me now. So the boundaries really start popping up when you really dig into your story. One of the things that I tell my clients is that, what is your goal? What is your ideal self? What does your best life look like? And I have them describe that to me. And I was like, oh, what does it taste like? Does it taste like fine dining? Does it taste like hot dogs? You know what I'm saying? Like, what does it taste like to you? You know, what does that best life feel like to you?
Yeah.
And they sit there and they're describing it, and they get into some really good descriptions. I think one said, I feel like I'm on a yacht and it's beautiful and the ocean water is sparkling and my partner is right there and I have my cat. And I'm like, okay. You know, I was like, and that's wonderful. Now, what in your life feels like that already? Crickets. Silence. I was like, that's the story you're creating.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the revolution. That's the revolution. When people say the revolution will not be televised, we're not talking about being in the streets.
That's
we're
right.
talking about the self-awakening.
Ooh, come on.
That is the strength.
Yeah.
That's the strength in doing the work for that self-awakening.
Yes.
And both of you ladies offer virtual services for people, and for the audience, you'll be able to find links to Jacqueline and Tanita's websites and social media handles. Can you both briefly highlight some of the services that you provide virtually?
Absolutely. Okay, so I have coaching as well as mentorship. I also provide, and it's self-actualization coaching. So it's literally getting yourself out of your own way, right? It's getting through your blockages and getting you to that next level. And mentorship is really kind of, it's kind of a little bit more intense. It digs into more like some of those old paradigms, some of the things you grew up with, some of those things that have been inhibiting you since childhood or since early adulthood. I also do mediumship readings and intuitive readings. But I really would like to talk about the coaching and the mentorship, because to be honest, the other readings are really can sometimes just be band-aids for what you're really looking for. Those readings are more like yes and no answers. But when you have an open-ended question, you are healing parts of your life. And so coaching and mentorship are really about that. That's what my coaching and mentorship are really about, is bringing newness to your life and deciding some things, placing those boundaries, teaching you how to own your story and what that looks like for you, and allowing you to develop in a real sort of way. So yeah.
So mirrored vision coaching is relatively new. It was a shift from doing birth work. I started doing birth work as a doula a few years ago. So while I don't do birth work anymore in the sense of taking on clients, I'm still so under mirror vision coaching, it's the coaching aspect, and it's relational coaching. The sexuality coach piece of it is not just, what kind of toy should I buy? Or, but it's really it's digging in deeper to have discussions with women and their partner on body positivity, body acceptance, self-esteem, releasing some of those traumas that prevent them from, experiencing orgasmic states, different relationship explorations. So it's the sex, but deeper. And everything is not about sex. That's probably a part of it. And then in the birth work aspect, I do still support women in that, but it's more so coaching, it's preparation for postpartum care, it's the transition into parenthood. For a lot of my clients, they're new parents, they're new mothers. And so I didn't think I would get pregnant, or this is my rainbow baby. I'm not sure if I'm ready. So it's a lot of working with women to transition into parenthood. And I will, do support on case-by-case basis. My Who Are You program is like my signature program, where it's it's starting as a 6-week, but it's going to morph also into a 3-month self-care type of program where we really dig in deep to do some self-actualization, self-care, and really starting to craft out the life that you want to live. Because in Mirror Vision Coaching, want to help women love who they see in the mirror so that they dare to live life unapologetically. And then lastly, creating transformative healing spaces that allow women to be free and to be whole and to be vulnerable and to be safe with no judgment. And we may do that with, a wine party, but everything is intentional, right? And you may come in with one thing, but you're going to walk out with a whole nother experience. So I just say, just trust the process. Just say yes. Just say yes. Because once you say yes, now the universe knows what to do with you.
Exactly.
Wonderful. You gave us the closing.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you for your transparency, for your courage on your journeys, for being here to talk with me and the audience. And thank you for the work that you do. The need for mental and emotional health support is even greater with everything that has happened in the world in this year. And we need you. So thank you, and continue to take care of yourselves so that you can keep taking care of all these other people. Because we need you.
And for the work that you're doing, because you are a healer.
Yes.
No, thank you.
Incredible, Charlene. These conversations are so needed. And like I said, communication is the path to healing. It's telling those stories. It's figuring out, who you are and where you come from and where you're going. It's redefining that. And that's what these types of conversation has done for us. Jacqueline, the fact that you said you started off in doula care, like, first of all, you are just everything. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, listen, I am totally crushing on you right now. You are brilliant. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
And I am so blessed to know that you exist and that you are doing this work. Like, it is so excellent. It's juicy. Okay. Yeah. You said it's juicy.
Yes.
Okay. Charlene, you are a beautiful soul, always have been. And I just so admire your mind and your work and what you're doing here. It's really lovely, you guys, ladies, and I so appreciate both of you, and I am totally blessed by this experience.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes. So thank you to the both of you. Thank you to the audience for tuning in to On Her Terms. My name is Charlene Ketchum, your host, and until next time.